And we're going to segue now, so that officially wraps our panel for the moment. And we will move towards the conclusion in closing remarks. So I'd just like to say thanks again for all of our panelists and the commentators and those joining us live as we go. But before we wrap, we would like to share some of the highlights from the top themes that emerged from today's discussion. And then also hear closing remarks from Dr. Shiro Hatakeyama, the Director General of the Asia Center for Air Pollution Research. So let's see what happened when we first kicked off a good 2.5 hours ago. We opened today's session with welcome and opening remarks by His Excellency, Mr. Yutaka Shoda, Vice Minister of Ministry of Environment of Japan, Dr. Dechen Tsering, the Regional Director and Representative of UN Environment Program Asia and the Pacific Office, also shared opening remarks during this congratulatory segment. And we heard from Mr. Jamalul bin Abu Bakar of the Ministry of Environment and Water in Malaysia, as well as Ms. Siwaporn Rungsinyan, who is with the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment in Thailand. We're fortunate also to have Mr. Zhao Jun from the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China. And closing our very first opening session, we also heard from Mr. Mohan Kumar Samaturia, the chair of the EANET Scientific Advisory Committee. However, before we jumped into the opening keynote session, we did hear from Mr. Koki Azuma of the Ministry of the Environment of Japan as well. And we benefited from the presentations by Dr. Hajime Akimoto, the guest scientist at the National Institute of Environmental Studies in Japan, and Dr. Marcus Aman, scientist of the Asian Pacific Clean Air Partnership in the science panel, who are also commenting in our just recent interactive panel discussion. So of course, we can't forget what we just recently experienced, but we were lucky to benefit from the air quality scientists and experts from the region and beyond, as well as representatives from related organizations. So this, of course, includes Dr. Fan Meng, who just closed with the final remarks previously, Professor Young Sun Woo, Dr. Supat Wang Watana, Mr. Björn Pedersen, Dr. Qinfeng Zhang, and of course, once again, our commentators, Dr. Aman and Dr. Akimoto. So some of the themes that came up, we had so many great insights in this last few hours. And we have been following a very interactive discussion just now as well. So here's some of the conclusions that we can summarize from the discussion so far. Number one, when it comes to the role of science in air pollution management, the keynote speakers and panelists have mentioned that science has been proven as a key source of information for air quality management throughout the years. The science, the source, the characteristics of the pollutants, the relevant sectors involved, and the impacts of air pollution could be identified thanks to this. It also provides a lot of options for the most appropriate way to manage it, and it helps policymakers set the rules and regulations. On a tangent related to this, of course, is the discussion of how to make that even more effective. So that's one of the questions we have, and we look forward to the next several years and beyond in terms of the ambition and opportunity. But it was also mentioned that science has provided and could continue to provide cost-effective solutions for air quality management. So the data has shown that the most affected countries due to the harmful impact of air pollution are low-income countries. Therefore, cost-effective solutions for the air pollution problem are essential to ensure affordable and applicable solutions. Thirdly, science could also forecast future trends and help to avoid potential air pollution problems going forward. So it's through data analysis and trends that science could indicate potential, catastrophes or unwanted events because of air pollution. So if actions can be taken promptly to avoid the potentially harmful effects, then it could save humanity in many different kinds of ways from the growing challenge. As we were just discussing, also, under the umbrella as well as climate change and climate action. Another key thread of the discussions throughout the event today include literally bridging the science and policy in the management of air quality. So there's certain key actors involved in this, and it includes, of course, the scientists and researchers in their role can definitely surface facts and solutions to the challenges. And most importantly, as we just touched on, communicate these findings in an important way so that they're more effective as well. Policymakers certainly are critical for the entire dialogue, as we've already discussed, for greater action on air pollution, because this requires more uptake by policymakers based on the data, based on the science and economic findings on the impacts. Therefore, so if efforts, this is part of the discussion themes of the past few hours, if the efforts by the scientific community to improve the uptake, to communicate policy relevant findings in a more clear, effective, incredible way, then this can have a significant impact on the decision-making process for where policy and regulation can go. Additionally, we talked about collaboration. What does it look like to have an integrated effect in a woven network throughout the region and internationally as well? So how to magnify the impacts of positive efforts, but also mitigate air pollution thoroughly. This requires the cooperation and collaboration of multiple different stakeholders, and then also tapping and leveraging the larger resources at play. So that resource mobilization piece that Dr. Zhang also brought up in regards to some of the things that ADB is already doing, but that type of lens, when we think about it with this context, in the way that EANET can also play a vital role in bringing all of the actors to work together to create this kind of synergy. Of course, we're talking as well about funding. What does it look like to have additional funding, not shrinking, but growing and building in this base? So this could also, of course, increase if there's more funds to build upon, work and collaborations together. So it's really important to also pay attention to the interest of funding agencies and donors in supporting air pollution efforts, as Dr. Sunwoo was also mentioning to us earlier. And also another question is around the sustainable funding mechanism. Something to be considered. How does this something that can not be one-offs, but again, a collaboration package that might be able to mobilize resources collectively? So we discussed it quite a lot, but there's some more things as well. So I'd like to also highlight, when it comes to creating the synergy among the different actors, we're talking about science as well as policy. The panelists mentioned several actions that could be taken. So one is to actually think about paying attention to the air pollution management's current and future cooperation in the region and beyond. It's certainly a transboundary problem in nature, and therefore it requires a collective response beyond the nation state, if you're looking at it that way. So harmony, to the point that Dr. Supat was also mentioning, in terms of making sure that there's a consensus-based approach. But of course, there's a nuance behind how to activate and do that too. But a collaborative platform like EANET can play a very, very important role in that kind of space. But also additionally, how do we feeding in scientific insights into the decision-making requires a systems perspective. That's something that wasn't necessarily explicitly expanded on, but certainly if we look at everything that was shared, we're talking about taking a systems approach to a systemic challenge. And so how do you coordinate and orchestrate a variety of actions amongst the different players around the table? And again, we've heard quite often, the communication aspect is important. So we heard about the Clean Air, for Blue Skies Day, weeks, et cetera, but how to get the media involved, how to get civil society involved in different ways. Understanding that the EANET is not necessarily designed to be all things to all people, to the point that Dr. Peterson initially brought up, but there are some key leverage points that could be explored in this regard. So again, just how to support the epistemic community in considering, the critical element of a successful environmental cooperation among the countries. This is something that will be explored and continued. And so with its new role, EANET could also utilize its strengths, such as large number of countries, stronger role as well, and raised level of ambition in terms of bringing the science into policy. And then, of course, reach out to other organizations in its countries to review and think about the ways that they can share and collaborate for maximum potential to be realized. So there was a lot we discussed today, and it's an incredible amount of fantastic substance and insights and examples. So again, would love to say thank you very much to every speaker that's contributed, every panelist. But with these great, insights and learnings in mind, I would also now like to invite Dr. Shiro Hatakeyama to share the final thoughts.
Thank you. The commemorative event for 20th anniversary of the EANET and the program Policy and Science Dialogue ended successfully. Thank you for your participation and cooperation. As introduced in the 20th anniversary event, EANET has achieved significant results over the last 20 years by implementing various activities such as quality controlled monitoring and reporting, data acquisition, capacity building, research, and public awareness in collaboration with participating countries of EANET and related organizations. While there was a significant increase of the emission of air pollutants in East Asia with a rapid economic and industrial development in the former decade, clear decrease of emission of air pollutants related to acid deposition was observed in the latter decade. We applaud that the activities of EANET could play an important role in such improvement of the atmospheric environment. There are still many kinds of issues related to air pollution, including acid deposition. Some air pollutants are strongly related to global warming and climate change, which is, so to say, the most important environmental problem in the world now. EANET has recently expanded its scope from acid deposition to atmospheric pollutants mainly related to acid deposition. As pointed out in the panel discussion, it is very important to expand the activity of EANET more in the future. We look forward to the continued cooperation with the participating countries of the EANET to address a wider range of atmospheric environmental issues. Thank you.